BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Black Box Ned 88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. All right, and welcome to our discussion series on the Zodiac Killer hoax theory. As you'll see here, this is listed as part 5, and this will be the final segment in the Zodiac Killer hoax theory open discussion. Maybe we'll do something in the future. But for now, if you're somebody who just can't hear enough about the Zodiac Killer and you want to hear some more things, I would like to recommend some uploads here on YouTube. First, giving a shout out to YouTube user Kylie Nicole, once again, Kylie Nicole, who did a video on the Zodiac Killer called Visiting the Locations of the Zodiac Killings. And that will be available in the description box here. The thing that is great about Kylie Nicole's video is it's about 6 minutes long, and it's a very short guided tour of Lake Herman Road, Blue Rock Springs, Lake Berryessa, and Presidio Heights. If you would like to see just a very short piece of videography about the different locations and Zodiac activity, I would recommend Kylie Nicole's video on that. And the next one that we have is one that we did here on this channel called There Was No Zodiac Killer, and it's part of the Zodiac Killer hoax theory discussions. The reason why I'm recommending that one is it's one that we have done here on Black Box Online Radio, but I like to say that it's perhaps an uncorrupted take on the subject because I made this upload without ever hearing about Thomas Henry Horn, didn't know about the myth of the Zodiac Killer, the Great Zodiac Killer hoax of 1986. Before I read the book, before I had even heard an interview with Thomas Henry Horn, I didn't even know his name. The reason why we made this one, well, first I should say it was in the summer of 2019, and over a period of about 9 months, people were sending me things in the comments section, very, very lengthy posts and comments. They were almost like short essays, really, talking about how there was no Zodiac Killer, and they're saying the reasons why. And we were discussing the contents of these essay-style comments that people had left, and once again, that's one of the reasons why I like to say that it's somewhat of an uncorrupted take on the subject, and that is also available in the description box. Once again, our upload called There Was No Zodiac Killer. Okay, now the next thing that I would like to do is to give a shout out to YouTube user Rick Hansen, who has left a comment on that particular one, and that could be a starting point for us today. Rick Hansen has something to say about the Zodiac Killer hoax theory, and you can hear all about this in our upload. There Was No Zodiac Killer, available in the description box here. Rick Hansen writes, "The hoax theory is not incorrect. It is just not completely a hoax. People latch on to the untruths in order to debunk the entirety. Further is the possibility of it starting as a complete fabrication and getting out of hand, or starting as a means of closing some old cases and current unknown cases. For it to be a complete hoax, then one thing has to be absolutely certain. There can be no evidence of any death, that is, no body, no blood sample, clothing, no burial. If only documents and paperwork exist, then it could be either a hoax or something more hideous. You did mention a phone call within 2 minutes claiming responsibility for a certain crime. That is talking about the murder of Darlene Ferrin. And 2 minutes after Darlene Ferrin arrived at the hospital dead on arrival, somebody called it in. She arrived at 12:38 a.m., 38 minutes after midnight, and the Zodiac Killer phone call came at 12:40 a.m. Look at as many reports as possible for that one. It means that the ambulance was most likely followed, and then the person called from either a nearby payphone or ... The person was a police person or medical person claiming to be the Zodiac Killer and claiming credit, and they rode along and made the call from the hospital. There are not many options available to explain that fact. In fact, the only other one that I can think of, which is unlikely, that's what Rick has written here, it was pre-planned as to timing. That is, the Zodiac drove back and forth on multiple occasions to ascertain timing from there to the nearest hospital, and at different time periods, then either a pre-recorded message or the actual phone call was made, and it was timed so accurately that it was within a few minutes of the hospital arrival." Wow, I mean, that is some excellent stuff right there. The first thing that I would say is, if we're just going to say something about the Zodiac Killer hoax theory, normally we begin this discussion by just having that one-sentence introduction. When we say hoax theory, and I'm sure you're probably familiar with it if you've already listened this far into the episode, the theory is that there wasn't a single perpetrator in the Zodiac Killer mystery, that these were unconnected murders, and one person was writing letters and possibly the ciphers, taking credit for these murders and making people think that this was all the activity of a single person. And his name was Hal Snook. He was a Napa County Deputy Narcotics Department, and this theory has been shared by Thomas Henry Horan in a variety of different things. The Great Zodiac Killer Hoax of 1986 and 69, as well as his book, The Myth of the Zodiac Killer, which is a compilation, I mean, more or less for lack of a better term, but I don't mean to be too bizarre with the details. The Myth of the Zodiac Killer is his book, in which he lays this out, that Hal Snook wrote the letters, but he says that there's no possible way that Hal Snook could have committed all of these murders. And there are some other things that we're going to get to, because there are many claims in the Zodiac Killer mystery. The first thing about Darlene Ferrin and her arriving at the hospital at 12:38, when I did this upload, and every time I've talked about this, about the Zodiac Killer making the call at 12:40 after Darlene Ferrin arrives at 12:38, I don't disagree with anything that Rick has said here, and I do not challenge that. It's more about how this was something that the Zodiac Killer, or whoever made the phone call, did not learn about from the newspapers. They did not learn about it from the evening news or the FM radio doing a broadcast on it. This happened the night of, and the person definitely would have had to have some type of first-hand connection, meaning this was not put in published print yet. If it had happened, after the murder of Darlene Ferrin had been written about in the papers, then we would be in a whole different situation. But I don't really dispute anything that Rick has said here, because at the end of the day, I don't necessarily know what happened. Now, when we said some things about the Zodiac Killer hoax theory, and we're going to have this open discussion, right? The first segment that we did on this, part one, that talked more about Thomas Henry Horan and his claims, some of the things that he has proposed about the Zodiac Killer mystery. And I don't need to restate that nutshell version that we've just said, like about how one person is taking credit for murders that he did not commit, and his name is Hal Snook, even though I did just restate it, so please forgive me. But the next thing to say is that there's an individual named Robert Graceman who wrote a book called Zodiac in 1986, and many parts of the book Zodiac were fabricated. You'll hear Thomas Henry Horan frequently say, he lied, Graceman lied, Graceman fabricated, Graceman lied about this, he lied about that. What does he mean by that? Well, as I understand it, it means that part of the sentences in the book Zodiac are true and based on the police reports, and part of the sentences are false. And if we can just choose an English name, how about Robert? Why not? And it would be something like, Robert went to the store and bought ice cream. If that sentence were written down, then Grace Smith would have cut it up and then changed it to, not Robert went to the store and bought ice cream, but instead, Robert went to the cafe and bought iced coffee. Certain words are the same and certain words are different. And I was also listening to an interview with Thomas Henry Horan that he did earlier today, and it was an interview that I hadn't heard before. We've discussed his appearance on the Opperman Report, but giving another shout out to YouTuber TH Kelly 67. I had never heard of this channel before, but even the host on that one, I don't know his full name, but he seemed like he was really up to date on conspiracy theories and had a lot of things to say about it and was presenting them in a rational manner. So once again, TH Kelly 67. Thank you to for your stuff as well. But this thing about Robert Graceman, I think that many parties are in agreement that Graceman lied and fabricated and put things in print in his 1986 book Zodiac, as well as Zodiac Unmasked, which we've discussed here on the channel, that were not very accurate. I mean, first of all, Graceman is a very weird true crime writer. So many things that he uses are based on hearsay, particularly the testimonials of Don Chaney in regards to the actions of Arthur Lee Allen. For a true crime book, I mean, a lot of the stuff in there is just hearsay, period. But the claim from Thomas Henry Horan is that Robert Graceman would have had access to the police reports if he were going to fabricate the sentences in such a way, like part of the sentence is true and part of the sentence is false. It'd be very easy for somebody to make up fictitious additives to a sentence. Now, I was just scrolling up and down on Google once, and I've completely lost the place about where I found this comment. I want to say that it was written by Mike Rodelli, but I'm not 100% sure, where it was a comment that was written that said, Grace Smith was expecting that the Zodiac Killer case file would never have been made available to the general public, because the case was taken to court, and then the entirety of the case file was released. And even in interviews, Thomas Henry Horan also says that never happens. That is something that is quite unexpected. So Graysmith was counting on the fact that he would never be fact-checked. He was counting on the likelihood of never being fact-checked. And then it still hasn't completely ruined him, because many people are still in support of Robert Graysmith. Many people still believe that his suspect, Arthur Lee Allen, was the Zodiac killer. But to say some things about that, I don't think that that is a very controversial claim. Instead, I think it's something that's not talked about enough, actually, that Robert Graysmith wrote the definitive book on Zodiac in 1986, and that he spread lots of false information about it. One thing, though, that Thomas Henry Horan expands upon is that he says, possibly, allegedly, maybe, Graysmith was an active participant in the Zodiac killer hoax. That you would have this guy named Hal Snook writing the letters, and that Robert Graysmith was assisting him the whole time. But when I interviewed Thomas Henry Horan, he told me flat out that he can prove Hal Snook wrote the letters, but what he cannot prove is that Graysmith was an active participant in this. However, in the interview on TH Kelly 67, Thomas Henry Horan did say that he had established a link between Robert Graysmith and Hal Snook, that they knew each other when they were very young, and I believe he's talking about living on an Air Force base together. However, in recent years, and once again, that's 2018, if we go to 2020, he has said very definitively that he is uncertain of that claim, but I will have to make a bold statement. I have not heard a single ounce of, 100% certainty that Robert Graysmith was an active participant in the Zodiac killer mystery, like as well to perpetrate this hoax. I mean, I don't see how anything could be interpreted that direction versus the other possibility that Graysmith simply misrepresented the case because he wanted to sell books, or that he misrepresented the case because he wanted to get his name in print and he wanted to get his name published. He didn't only want to be the production assistant from the for the San Francisco Chronicle. And Gareth Penn even wrote about this in Times 17 when he said that this guy, Robert Graysmith, was moved to the basement or some area in the Chronicle building because he had plagiarized a cartoon from the Vancouver Sun. And then Gareth Penn's even writing, that is so bizarre that he wasn't fired. I know it's just a cartoonist job and it's not like he's an investigative journalist, but that is bizarre that they wouldn't fire him. Now, why would they do that? And then my Horan sense started tingling and I was like, maybe he has dirt on some other people, like perhaps Paul Avery or perhaps Keith Power, and he knows something about what is going on with this. The only other thing I would say before we move on is that somebody left a comment on this T.H. Kelly 67 interview when they said that Thomas Henry Horan should write a book on the history of fake news. And I was like, absolutely, I would read that in a heartbeat. Because the way that the Zodiac Killer hoax theory was introduced to me was, once again, just from people in the comment section writing some detailed comments, saying that this was a hoax that was orchestrated by the San Francisco Chronicle. Somebody even claimed that this was a hoax by the Chronicle to sell newspapers. And Thomas Horan does talk about that in interviews, not specifically the Zodiac Killer, excuse me. I mean, I want to be very precise, like somebody did say that in the comments, but from Thomas Horan, he was talking about how the San Francisco Chronicle would stage certain events and make people think that they were real, but in reality, there were genuine hoaxes perpetrated by the Chronicle, such as there was a riot that took place involving a motorcycle gang that was completely arranged by the San Francisco Chronicle, and the photos were faked, and the whole thing just did not happen. And we didn't have the internet, we didn't have social media, we didn't have camera phones. It would have been much more difficult to document how these things are fake. But another thing we can say about that is people even do that to this day. They fake things and they stage things, and they get caught on camera because we have things like the internet, social media, and camera phones. Now, what I would like to do now is to jump over to Thomas Henry Horan's zodiachoax.blogspot.com. And we have some things here that Thomas Henry Horan said. He wants to make 4 claims that people have put against his work here. And I think let's just read off the little introduction, and then let's keep going with his 4 claims. These are the reasons that most people think there was a quote-unquote Zodiac killer, even after they admit that some of my work is interesting, especially about the first two murders. I guess we're talking about Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs. But if we're just talking about the first two murders, that would be just David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen. Most people still think that the quote-unquote Zodiac definitively stabbed Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard and shot Paul Stine, and wrote at least most of the letters, even though we all know that some of the letters look fishy, particularly the Melvin Belli letter, I should add, as well as the 1978, and I don't mean to go down that pathway. All right, the four claims. Number one, the handprinting on the door of Brian Hartnell's car matches the Zodiac letters according to the experts, which supposedly rules out a copycat slayer. Talking about the Lake Berryessa stabbing, a message was written on the car door. Number two, the circled crosshair symbol on the Zodiac's costume also rules out the possibility of a copycat. Number three, there is no way a copycat could have learned to copy the Zodiac's handprinting at the time. Number four, the pieces on Paul Stine's shirt that were mailed in after Paul Stine was murdered on October 11th of 1969 prove that the Zodiac was present at the crime. And I have to scroll down here because can anyone, and I mean anyone, prove me wrong about points 1, 2, 3, and 4? Because if they can, that would be a big help to my career. Or can anyone at least find any actual evidence that links any two of the Zodiac murders? Anyone? Question mark. Okay, well, a whole lot of things to say about that. We could do a whole 25 minutes on that, but on like talking about these 4 points here. The first thing I would say is all of these are talking about proving a negative, and then, you know, it's not impossible to prove a negative. It's just, it's going to be illogical. It's going to be irrational. As I understand, the rule of logic is you never have to prove a negative. Can you prove that the handprinting on the door was not written by person X? Can you prove that the circle crosshair symbol rules out a copycat? I mean, with all of these things here, even if we're not going to say proving a negative, talking about the handwriting on Brian Hartnell's car door, the crosshair symbol, that the copycat could not have learned the Zodiac's handprinting at the time, the pieces of Paul Stine's shirt were mailed in afterwards. Yes, Thomas Horan has provided explanations for those things, but the thing that I am not convinced of is that they are 100% accurate. Pick up any Zodiac killer book. People have explanations for these things, and I was definitely going down the pathway of multiple perpetrators back in 2019 based on all of the differences that are found in the four canonical Zodiac killer crimes, Lake Herman Road, Blue Rock Springs, Lake Berryessa, and the Paul Stine murder in Presidio Heights. They are different. But one of the things that we could say is psychological profiling, that we're dealing with somebody who is trying to create a 4-act stage play, really acting out like a real-life Mikado with influences from all different types of literature, who is going to put on the executioner's hood at Lake Berryessa, then makes a grand exit from the Paul Stine murder and disappears into the night, never to be seen again. The psychological profiling is also on the side of a single perpetrator. But I don't mean to really just get stuck on that point, because we have talked about that a lot in other episodes. What I can say, though, is that if we're going to be talking about the way that these things are arranged. Number one, the handwriting on the car door is similar to the Zodiac letters. Number two, somebody saw a circle with a crosshair symbol. Number three, there is no way a copycat could have learned the Zodiac's handwriting. Number four, that the Stine shirt was mailed in after Paul Stine was murdered. How on earth does that have anything to do at all with multiple perpetrators versus a single perpetrator? One person could have done those things, or multiple people could have done those things. That's just a cloud of ambiguity with these 4 points right here. And I don't mean to trash everything that Thomas Henry Horan says. As I mentioned midway through, I think that it's very good to talk about the claims that Robert Graysmith made in his book that are inconsistent with the police report. But I said, though, I'm completely unconvinced that Robert Graysmith was an active participant in this. I don't say that I'm right and he's wrong. I mean, absolutely not. It's very possible that everything Thomas Horan has accused Robert Graysmith of is accurate. I don't know 100%. The way we approach things on this channel is more like if somebody is telling you a story or someone is sharing something with you, and then you have to listen, and you're like, which parts of this are true and which parts of this are false? You're like, wait a second, is that what really happened, or did something else go on? But any of these points here could have easily been done by Somebody else. What's your point? The handwriting on the car door at Lake Berryessa is similar to the Zodiac letters. All right. What's your point? That there was a Zodiac symbol on the costume, there's a Zodiac symbol on Brian Hartnell's car door, and there's a Zodiac symbol in the letters. All right. What's your point? There's no way a copycat could have learned the hand printing at the time? Well, no, that's very possible. I mean, and to the credit of Horn, he has shared the reasons about how that is available and how this stuff was published in papers. And there's no possible way that somebody could have gotten a hold of Paul Stein's shirt. There could have been numerous ways, and these are the things they were discussing in that interview today. Journalists would have had access to that area, people working for the San Francisco Chronicle. So what I can say is, first and foremost, I absolutely don't dispute that I completely debunked or ruled out or provided a shred of solitary evidence that I proved any of these things to be wrong or that I proved any of them to be right. But I would say, though, with the Zodiac Killer hoax theory, it is not completely out of bounds. It is not completely far out. I mean, if anything, though, what we said in part 3, when we were talking about Michael Butterfield and ZodiacKillerFacts.com, I mean, as well as what Rick Hansen read off in his, wrote in his comment, and I read off, that, okay, if real murders are taking place, this is not a hoax, and if anything, it's not the myth of the Zodiac Killer or the Great Zodiac Killer hoax, it's the Great Zodiac Killer co-conspirator, and that's really what's going on. But that's just labeling. That's just labeling. So I guess I would say that I'm not 100% convinced, but what we could say is, how do these explanations guarantee that these things were committed, that these murders were committed? They aren't really things. These murders were committed by this group of people, that someone was active at Lake Herman Road, Blue Rock Springs, Lake Berryessa, and the Paul Stein murder, and they're all different people. Do you see any sort of definitive evidence? As for the fingerprints, let's bring that one up. You know, the Zodiac Killer made a very bold claim in his letters that he didn't leave any fingerprints because he put 2 coats of airplane cement on his fingertips, so he wouldn't have left any fingerprints behind. And if there is any truth to this, somebody did leave the comment that it was possible that the Zodiac would have learned how to transfer fingerprints from some way, somehow, leaving false clues at the crime scenes, meaning that he would never get caught. I mean, that's not really a guess or an assumption. The Zodiac wrote in the letter that he left no fingerprints because of the airplane cement. So that's something else to think about. If we're ever going to find an end to the Zodiac Killer mystery, I'm really hoping that they're going to be able to do something with DNA testing, like going back like the Golden State Killer, finding some ancestral DNA, and then challenging some of the points and looking like if they can eliminate certain family members, and then they can go all the way back to the 1800s and then move forward and then eliminate, certain people based on DNA. And if we had somebody's DNA, perhaps some fingerprints that matched, handwriting analysis, plus if someone were to some way somehow find Paul Stein's wallet, I don't even think the hood from Lake Berryessa would be sufficient. How do you know that someone else didn't make one? I mean, we even have, reenactments in like the 1971 film The Zodiac Killer, or the 2007 film Zodiac from David Fincher. How would we know that those things are authentic? But if somebody had Paul Stein's wallet, which may even have blood on it, DNA as well, if they could do things like that, then perhaps we could get to a more conclusive ending in the Zodiac Killer mystery, and we could look at the real possibilities of a single perpetrator, multiple killers, or the Zodiac hoax theory, which would be multiple killers that were unconnected, not part of any thrill kill club. Well, maybe. I mean, the Zodiac hoax theory is very broad. Okay, now, what can I just ask you guys? What would you like to hear about? Would you like to hear about some refutations to this thing? Because I have to tell you, I'm not completely convinced that Thomas Horn is wrong. In fact, I think that his presentation and stance on this is very compelling. I'm not convinced, as you can hear. But what would you like to hear about in the future? I mean, would you like to hear more challenges to the Zodiac hoax theory? Would you like to hear something about trying to prove a different point in the Zodiac Killer mystery? Please drop any ideas or suggestions that you have for future episodes in the comments section below, and you can always visit the material in the description box. The best way you can support this channel is just by listening to our upload, There Was No Zodiac, as well as we also have the upload from Kylie that's available in the description box here, and you can check out her video on the Zodiac Killer videography video tour. And that's all for me now. What do you guys want to hear about? Please share anything at all in the comment section below. Thank you for listening to the Zodiac Killer Hoax Theory Open Discussion. I will see you on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.